Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy-nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, it's Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and you're joining us on the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. Today, I'm joined by Mery Vargas Mares. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course. So tell us all about you and why you do what you do.
So I am a grief psychotherapist based out here in Reno, Nevada. I'm also a grief meditation teacher. And what brought me to this work was a deeply painful loss that I experienced a while back in 2012. My brother passed away unexpectedly. And at the time, I was a graduate student in counseling school. And I was in the midst of it and had the opportunity through one of our classes to be in a small counseling group for grief. And so that experience, having to open up, having to be vulnerable while learning how to be a therapist, really opened me up to wanting to work with people who have experienced grief and have lost people in their lives. And so I'm really happy to be able to service and share that experience and guide people in their grieving journey.
I feel like it's always interesting when people's career paths end up following a path that maybe they wouldn't have set out for themselves, right? It becomes almost a heart-centric journey. Same thing with me. Like I had a career path change from television into finance after my grandpa passed. So on your journey, what would you say for you has been the most rewarding so far?
The most rewarding, oh, wow, that there's been so many rewarding moments. I think it's when clients feel held and experience a sense of relief, and not even a sense of relief, more so a sense of like, she's got me. She understands me. She might not understand the unique experience of grief that I'm going through, but she gets me. And I think that experiencing that on a daily basis with clients, knowing that I'm deeply invested in their stories and I'm deeply invested in their path towards healing it's an amazing gift. It's recognizing that I've been through these triumphs, I've been through these losses, and there's been so many losses since then. Um, since that landmark loss of losing him, that really helps me connect with that clientele. And, initially when I started out my career, I didn't want anything to do with grief. It was so tender. It was so, I mean, just even mentioning his name, I couldn't even say one complete sentence without breaking out in tears. Because I really did imagine my life with him up until I was a grandparent, at least, right? And I think that from there, I just kept attracting people who were grieving. And at first, I just wanted to deal with anxiety. Hey, come on in here. You're full of anxiety. I can help you. And then it just turned into this thing where people were coming to me with their losses. And I just knew that I had to make that shift and specialize in this work. And it was also through my own healing journey that I was able to open myself more to the pain of others, having really dived into my own.
When it comes to grief, I feel like that is obviously can be a very heavy word for folks, and everybody deals with it differently. Um, Definably, and this is kind of a loaded question a little bit, but how do you see people deal with grief? What do you recommend for people to deal with grief? What does that look like? Because I know everyone grieves differently.
Right. Absolutely. I don't think of it as trying to come up with the right word. It's not really dealing with it, it's more going with it.
Mm,
It's entering into it. One of my favorite quotes by Rumi is the wound is where the is excuse me, the wound is the place where the light enters you. And that is my ultimate, I say that to myself all the time. If you can enter and move yourself into that grief in so many different ways. I use meditation, I use movement, talk therapy, of course, EMDR, any type of modality where you can feel it, right? And that's what I see so many clients is that they don't, they're so disassociated from the experience and the pain that they don't feel it,
mm.
right? So it's really about entering into it. And it's hard. It's excruciatingly hard. I mean, that's why there's a drug epidemic in the country, right? Because we want to block away we want to block away physical pain. We want to block away emotional pain. Well, there's a lot of other reasons, but
No, and you bring up a good point because dealing with is very mainstream to say it that way, right? But it's more of a
Mhm.
navigating it of whatever that looks like for you. That's interesting. And I've heard that quote before, and that resonates with me a lot as well, on so many different facets. I mean, for me, it's also seeing people, not only in my own personal world, but seeing clients navigate through that from loved ones and whatnot, and how people are embracing it or not, or some people are just dealing with it. So
Right.
it's always been such a fascinating realm. And I've had another guest on the podcast, and she was talking through, is not a grief counselor, but she was, as a young person, was very navigated to people passing and the
Mm.
emotions behind people passing and what that looked like. And when she was little, I remember her sharing a story of how she lived by a graveyard, and she was always
Mm.
enthralled of watching how families and people interacted with people there. And so for her, that was such a pivotal moment of how she grew up and becoming a death doula and navigating
Mm.
through that as well. So your job is obviously extremely important for so many different facets of how people are navigating in their own lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say that as a kid, I was always very drawn to the interactions that people would have between each other and the energies that I would feel. And, I would always get in trouble from my parents for staring at a
Mm,
family or a couple because I was so entranced by if it was this like loving moment between a couple, I was very much what brought them to this. Why are they here? What's going on? What's the backstory? Very, very curious. To where I guess as a kid it looked rude, right? Like, why are you staring at that person? Because I had this whole story going on in my head. And so that's what draws me to this work as well, is the story. Is the story of your grief. What is your grief? What does that mean to you? And most importantly, in the later stages of counseling, can you perhaps, and maybe you're not ready, maybe this takes several years, right? Or maybe it's 6 months, who knows? Everyone's different. Perhaps can you get to this moment of growth and or transformation? Can that happen? I think
makes
that's
sense.
the ultimate, right? Um, it can, but once again, excruciatingly difficult.
So watching people was also something that I was drawn to as a younger person, like watching people in that moment navigate whatever that moment was, whether they were
Right.
unhappy with each other, loving on each other, just being in that exact now moment it still is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
How do you not take your work home with you? How does that not get so
Mhm.
heavy for you as an individual?
Yeah. I'm starting to feel a little emotion because I do take it home with me. I have every strategy available to me. I meditate every day. I read. I'm completely immersed in my profession, but like I also have a very fun and full life where I have all these hobbies and I'm active and I love to be with my family, my kids and my friends, and I love to go dancing and cooking and all these things. And yet there are some times, especially in December, where it gets very overwhelming. So yes, I've done a great job in the past couple of years, I would say, of not taking everything home, but there are times when there's just a flood of loss coming in, and some that strike a chord with me because they remind me of my brother,
Mm.
or there's a connection between the age of the person who passed and my kids, or some other type of connection that has me go home and cry. I mean, that's how we release. That's one way of release. It's powerful. I cry all the time. So I've cried in my meditations. I've cried um, everywhere and anywhere. And that's what I encourage my clients to do. And anyone who is on who is on a grief journey, is to cry when it happens. Cry in the middle of the grocery store when you hear that song that reminds you of your person. Just let it go. And there are so many kind people around that might acknowledge that. And maybe they don't because they're uncomfortable with their own grief, which I find that a lot. But for me, crying helps. Crying. Yeah. It's been a hard month for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate you being open and vulnerable and sharing your personal story as well.
Yeah.
So, one thing we like to talk about on the podcast is money, which I feel when I met you, I feel like there's such a tie many times to grief and money and the psychology behind money. What's a money memory that you have that you feel has molded your relationship to money as an adult?
Um, so I'm going to connect this one to grief. I had several money memories that came up, but the one that's really sticking out to me is after my brother passed. He didn't have hardly anything in the bank, but he was part of an electrical union. And with that, they paid a death benefit. And it was kind of the discretion of the electrical union, right? And because his death was so sudden and traumatic, the union decided to award my family that money, right? And at the time, my husband and I had two kids, two littles at the time. We were living in a condo. And we always wanted to live in a particular neighborhood. We had that dream. My parents had also received a huge insurance settlement from his death. And I had to really pick up most of the pieces for the funeral. I'm the only sibling, and the memorial, and so many other things that happen, the enormous amount of stress.
You are listening to the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
Hey, it's Jennifer. I wanted to take a quick break to remind you that you are worthy to have a seat at the table when it comes to money and your finances. We, both me and my team at Platinum Wealth Management, want to meet you where you are, whether you're starting out, starting over, or have been investing for years. Reach out to us at platinumwealth.net or call us at 775-717-0001. We'd be honored to help.
And now, back to the podcast.
And so my parents were kind enough to say, hey, you take this money from the electrical union and do what you want with it. And so what I did was we sold our condo, we moved in with my mom, and we took off for a month to Spain. And we followed the journey that my brother had taken.
Oh,
I think it was maybe 10 years prior to that, with an ex-girlfriend that he had. And she's a writer, so she had sent me all these beautiful images and memories. Um, and, I remember one was we were in the middle of Barcelona, and she writes about he was so enthralled with this orange juice machine. Like he had never seen anything like that in America, and was like, oh my goodness, look at wow, this is amazing. And it was those little moments like that. So I remember stopping in Barcelona and staring at this intricate orange juice squeezer and tearing up at that sight and, you know, turning the corner and then seeing this other landmark that she had talked about. It was and this was about 8 months after he passed. So it was part of my healing process and it was expensive, but I'm like, you know what? I'm using that money for that. And then, of course, I had this very practical side of myself growing up in my own family with how money was used that I'm like, this is our opportunity, honey. We're going to live with my mom for a little bit. And you know, we took the money from the sale of the condo, and then we took the remaining money from that electrical union monies that they had given us, and we put a down payment on a fixer upper in the Old Southwest. And we've been here for almost 11 years. And my husband saw it. I saw it. I didn't want anything to do with it. It was definitely the the worst house on the block. But investing wise, that's what you want to do. So we took an enormous risk. We went in there, bought the house, and my husband is such a creative visionary when it comes to him imagining and reimagining spaces. There was a back garage in the back, and he's like, "Look, there's a space on top. We'll put a guest house up there." So we ended up doing that. And I named it the Casita de las Mariposas Amarillas, which means the house of the yellow butterflies. And there's a lot of stories I have about yellow butterfly appearances that happened after Ernie passed. And it's been an incredible experience. We host mostly medical professionals long term, and we host a lot of people coming in for medical long term stays. They have Lyme disease or just a plethora of issues, right? And it's been amazing. It's this little casita that I believe has the energy of Ernie in it, that has the energy of healing. And we've met incredible people through this. Yeah, we're just ready to host another long-term medical stay for a couple months coming up in January. And I'm very excited. We get close to the people. We still get, we're connected over the years. And it's an opportunity of giving back, of turning once again something that was horrific, that was traumatic, that was tragic in my life into something that feels good. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and being present, but sharing that entire story.
Yeah. You're welcome.
So another thing we talk through are financial infidelities, and that could be a big, hairy, scary word for a lot of folks, and definably different for a lot of folks too. What's a financial infidelity that you experienced, either yourself or that you witnessed, that you think other folks could learn from?
Well, I was in college. I went to the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. I grew up in Central California. And so because of that, I obviously couldn't commute. I rented an apartment. It was my second year. And I had two roommates and both wonderful people, but we're all struggling. I had to work two jobs. We all luckily had scholarships there. I was able to get a financial scholarship there that paid for most of it, but there wasn't any money for expenses. I remember I took the room that had um, like the wall that I don't know how they made this wall, but a very, very temporary wall, no closet. The room's about the width of a bed, very small, whatever. We're just trying to make it. We're all trying to make it. We were all working and so forth. And one of my roommates she was having a tough time, but she also did not manage her money well. She bought designer clothes. She was into the whole LA scene. I was a small town girl that didn't care about any of that stuff. And so for me, it was like, well, I got to put food in my mouth and pay rent, But anyway, she got a little bit too caught up in that whole LA scene with the money and so forth. And one day I came home and I had sensed that she was charging us too much for the electricity bill, and she had put all the bills in her name. It's because we would just pay her at the end of the month. And I just decided to open the mail. And sure enough, there was a million late charges, and she was charging us for all of those late charges when I had been paying her on point every single month, right? And I mean, the betrayal that came, we're all struggling. I mean, we're looking in our fridge trying to make a meal out of ketchup and rice and any other condiments that were available. And she's over here, I feel like stealing my money, the hard
Mm.
money that I had worked for. So that didn't go well. I certainly confronted her, and I was able to show her the bills, and from there on out, we both, me and my other roommate, we both requested to see the bills, and it turned out okay. It was kind of towards the end of that year, that school year. But no, we did not room together after that. Absolutely
Oh,
not.
I was going to ask that, but I assumed not.
No.
It's interesting how people's financial infidelities also really mold their relationship to money moving forward too, of how they navigate things and maybe checking bills closer, right? Not always having that entrustment with other folks, thinking that they're always being open and honest. Has that reflected anywhere throughout your journey, or was that kind of a one-time deal, or?
Absolutely. I check every single bill. Absolutely. But I was like that before then as well, but even more so.
Mm-hmm.
And there's mistakes that happen, right? There's human error.
Sure.
There's a late charge here, there's a late charge there, or you see something on a credit card bill that you didn't buy, and yeah, of course you're going to question it. Or there's reoccurring charges now, right? On so many different subscription services. And if you're not using it anymore, then all those expenses add up. So yes, yes.
Good, good. Yeah, self-auditing, I think, is always a good thing, right? Like, what are you spending? Where's it going? What's that look like? Not only for yourself, but I feel like for businesses as well. So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that. So as
Yeah.
we start to wrap the conversation, one thing I like to ask is, what are tips and or tricks that you use to utilize money differently in your own household?
Um, I think something that's really helped is just having a set, obviously, I'm sure so many other people have said this, but having a set budget.
Mhm.
And going into, for example, like grocery store shopping, I would have a number in my head. Okay, I'm not going to spend more than $100 or $50 or whatever it is, right? And in my head, and this is great to just keep your brain nice and young and fresh anyway, I would just do, as I'm putting something in the cart, do the math. All right, bananas minus $3. Okay, crackers minus $5. Meat, whatever it is. And then once you hit that threshold, you're done. Once you hit the 50 mark or the 100 mark or whatever your budget is, there's no more. And if you have excess of that, then you have to look at your cart and be like, well, do I really need those Twinkies or the Oreos? This also helps health-wise too, right?
It does.
Um,
And not going grocery shopping hungry. That's the worst.
oh, yes, yes, yes. So I've used that a lot in the past. In the holidays, it doesn't always can't always follow that too much, but I think that's really helpful. Also, just making sure that I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but all those reoccurring charges that you're subscribing to, subscription services, if you're not
Mhm.
using them, get rid of them. The $10 a month, $15 a month, $3 a month, whatever it is, add up.
Totally. And fascinating. Some people will have multiple subscriptions for the same thing and not realize it. So it's easy to be like, why do I have two Netflix subscriptions when I only need one? Or do I need one? Like what makes sense, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending time and chatting today.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.